Okay, so one of the frustrations I had while I was off is that I was watching this war go on in Israel. Israel is the champion of having very quick wars. This one was 11 days, but most of them you can count by days, even the ones where they were facing whole armies. And it was frustrating to me because there was no one on liberal media to defend Israel, really. We've become this country now where we're kind of one-sided on this issue. I would also like to say off the bat that I don't think kids understand, and when I say kids, I mean the younger generations, that you can't learn history from Instagram. There's just not enough space. So I want to go over some of the history, but first I read your column on it, even-handed and brilliant as usual. But let me just quote you off the bat. You say, at home, Israel has a robust democracy that gives more rights to Arab citizens than its neighbors do. This was after all a war with Gaza. Thank God Israel treats its Arab citizens better than Egypt, Syria, or Saudi Arabia treat their Arab citizens. I didn't see much of that in the press, so I was glad to see you say it. Can you put some bones on that? Why do you say they treat their citizens better, their Arab citizens?
So, I also said a lot more. And clearly within Israel, then Arab citizens obviously vote. They can serve in the Knesset. They can be judges. Some of the most robust organizations speaking up for Palestinians are organizations like B'Tselem, the human rights organization. That does not happen in Egypt, which obviously massacres Egyptians who support democracy. We've seen what happens in Syria. But I would also say that, I made that point for context. I think it's important to understand that that Israel at home truly is robust. But, I don't think that's a defense for Israel engaging in possible war crimes in Gaza or engaging.
Well, Gaza fired 4,000 rockets into Israel. What would you say Israel should have done instead of what they did?
So
how could you not commit?
So, international lawyers are pretty clear that they have a right to defend themselves. They have a right to respond at military targets, but there was a sense that the response was probably a war crime because it did not sufficiently avoid civilian casualties.
But they purposely put the rockets in civilian places. That's their strategy.
Well, likewise, Israel's defense ministry is in a civilian area. Both sides do this, partly because they're crowded countries. I do think that Hamas particularly does this, and I think that's a war crime on the part of Hamas. And clearly, Hamas is engaging in war crimes when it shells Israel.
War is a crime. It seems like a silly argument when people go to war. There are certain things that are beyond the pale. This seems like, it was a normal war. People die in war. It's a horrible thing. But
we have developed laws of war precisely to restrain the inhumanity of war. We don't allow chemical weapons.
But I don't know how else you respond to when you have what if Canada fired 4,000 rockets into America, or Mexico, which is an even better analogy because we actually did steal the land from Mexico. I would submit that Israel did not steal anybody's land. This is another thing I've heard the last couple of weeks, words like occupiers and colonizers and apartheid, which I don't think people understand the history there. The Jews have been in that area of the world since about 1200 BC, way before the first Muslim or Arab walked the earth, 1,000 years before. Jerusalem was their capital. Okay, so if it's just about who got there first, it's not even close. There have been a continuous Jewish presence. Yes, the Jews were the ones who were occupied by everybody. The Romans took over at some point, and then the Persians and the Byzantines, and then the Ottomans. So yes, there was colonization going on there. Beginning in the 20th, 19th century, they started to return to Palestine, which was never an Arab country. There was never a country called Palestine that was a distinct Arab country. And yes, there was a problem there because there was two people who wanted to share the land, which is why the UN in 1947 said, okay, we're going to partition it. We have the map. I want to show it. People forget what the map looks like. This is what was on the table at the beginning. The green is the part that the Arab population would have gotten. It's a good part of the country. It's the good part, a lot of it. Look what Israel has, a little sliver by the coast and the desert in the south. That second map is what Israel has today. Yes, it is a lot more. But doesn't it behoove the people who rejected the treat, the half a loaf, and then continue attacked? Hamas's charter says they just want to wipe out Israel. Their negotiating position is you all die.
But, I mean, there's a difference between defending Hamas, which I agree commits war crimes, and I would accept that. I think too often in liberal circles there's been a tendency to elide the repression of Hamas, the homophobia of Hamas, the misogyny of Hamas. But that also does not excuse Israel ruling Palestinians in the West Bank, for example, without giving them any vote, taking water and giving it to settlers, and maybe most important, damaging any possibility down the road of creating a two-state solution. You know, how do we avoid a war when somebody is shelling, your neighbor is shelling you? That's hard. But what we can do is try to create a two-state solution 10 years from now. And the way you do that is you don't build up settlements right now in the West Bank, and you don't create this division where you don't seize their homes in Sheikh Jarrah.
I would agree with that, and I think a lot of Israelis do too. Do they not?
Not enough to elect.
Well, because again, I mean, first of all, the two-state solution has been on the table a number of times. There could be an Arab capital in East Jerusalem now, if Yasser Arafat had accepted that in 2003. He did not. I mean, they have rejected this and went to war time and time again. And you know, as far as Gaza goes, it's amazing to me that the progressives think that they're being progressive by taking that side of it, the Bella Hadids of the world, these influencers. I just want to say, in February of this year, a Hamas court ruled that an unmarried woman cannot travel in Gaza without the permission of a male guardian. Really? That's where the progressives are. Bella Hadid and her friends would run screaming to Tel Aviv if they had to live in Gaza for one day.
Right. But, I mean, I've been to Gaza any number of times, and ordinary Gazans complain about Hamas all the time. I did not perceive Bella Hadid as defending Hamas. I saw her as speaking up for, you know, the 67 kids in Gaza who were killed.
Well, she's from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is I think what she chanted with people. That is a PLO slogan that means Israel from the river to the sea, is that there will be no more Israel. You want to say something about this?
Well, I was kind of glad to listen because I feel like, do I want to step on a landmine? No, not really. But just to buttress Nick's point a little bit, is I understand that they were about to form a government that included the Arab Party.
Correct.
And once you're part of the government, if they need your 3 votes in the Knesset to get to 61,
which
you have real power.
No apartheid state ever did. What's it? An apartheid we think of as South Africa, which is the white people in Britain and Holland who never had any claim to the land or any history there, came thousands of years later and just took it over. That's a little different. And then they kept it an apartheid state because they just wanted the power. The Israelis, they have made mistakes, but it's an apartheid state because they keep getting attacked. If they don't keep a tight lid on the shit, they get killed. That seems like something different.
But for the same reason that you admire Israeli democracy, and that you admire the fact that Arabs within Israel have the vote, then shouldn't those Palestinians in the West Bank have a vote for the people who rule their lives?
But again, Israeli Arabs do have the vote, and they're in the parliament, unlike in an apartheid. Okay.